Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. We have with us Dave Lundquist, Pastor Dave, and we have James, who is the
Morning.
board president of IDEA.
Good
Thank
morning.
you so much for being with us today. We're going to get this kicked off. And IDEA is an amazing organization that we work with in the Philippines that helps deaf children. And there is currently 8 schools in the Philippines. And I won't steal any of James's thunder, but I was thinking that, before we get into this and get too far down, like, why is this important for the entrepreneurial journey? Why is this important, for those of you building your business or building your executive career? And I'll tell you that just a quick note. It was I think it was 2015 or 2016. And I was sitting in my office and I had just lost a contract that we had. And it was a very large, multi-million dollar contract. And it wasn't that we had lost it for any specific reason other than it just went out to RFP. And when it came back out to RFP, request for proposal, there was somebody else who bid it lower. But it was a significant chunk of revenue. It was, a multi-million dollar contract. And I was just thinking, oh man, what a bummer this is, and I was just having one of those moments that sometimes you can have as an entrepreneur. And I was sitting in my car at the time, and I didn't even want to go into the office. And I was like, man, I don't even want to go in here. I don't even want to do this. And it was one of those, we can have those down moments where we're just like, what am I doing? What's the point of this? Why keep doing this? Because, I was going to have to let some people go, right? Like there was some contract responsibilities that they had. And so it was going to create some downsizing. And so I was just, not in a good place at this particular moment. And so sometimes when I get into not into a great place, I like to just take a drive before I make any decisions. And I just like to think about things. And so I pulled out of the office and I went on a drive, and I think I drove around for a couple hours. And, during that particular time, I always go back, and it's a lot of prayer, right? Lord, where are we happening? God, what's going on here? What it is. And I think that, what I think is always, how are we going to get through this? And what I find is that in that moment of prayer, in that moment of need, in that moment of meditation, God always provides a way. And one of the things that keeps hope and keeps things moving forward is I was sitting there and I was thinking, gosh, I should just quit this. I should just end all of this. I hate going through this all the time, because that's how it is in business, at least in service business. And I had this thought of, well, Dave, and I believe God was talking to me, and I said, this business, you're not in business, for you, you're in business for me. You're in business to give. Look at all of the places that you give back to. Look at all of the missions groups that you support. And this was, before Pastor Dave came on and kind of streamlined our giving portfolio. And I think at the time we were giving to 135 different missions groups across the globe. And so the impact that we were having, the work that we were doing, that was really impactful. And so on that drive, it was kind of thinking and meditating towards the groups that we give to and the change that we were able to help in the world. And it wasn't about me. It wasn't about the contract, but it was about, let's continue to give, because our mission isn't about quitting. Our mission is about changing the world. Our mission is about going where God's not. Our mission is about continuing to pour in and sow into the kingdom. And that was really just enlightening. And I've had a few of those drives over the years where things are just tough and they're not right mentally. And you go through a tough moment in business, and how do you recover from that? And I think you've got to understand your why. You've got to understand your purpose. And my purpose isn't to be great myself, but my purpose is to give to the kingdom and give to an amazing organizations that help change the world. And so when I'm down, or when I feel like quitting, or when I feel like the burden is too much, or when I feel like it's not worth it, it's awesome to be able to look at an amazing organization like IDEA, International Deaf Education Association. And it's amazing to sometimes read back and look at those stories, or look at the the notes that people write you and say, hey man, I can't believe the position we were in. Thanks for your help. Wouldn't have made it without you. Just sometimes those little encouragements really help to drive you forward. So for the business owners and the leaders, like, why give? Why give? You don't give for you. You give for the person that's receiving and what it's going to do to them. But the thing is that it creates this unbelievable joy within your own heart, and it gives you a purpose to drive forward even when times are tough. And everybody has tough times, and some people quit and some people walk away. But I believe that when you have a purpose and a why, it makes that really amazing. And so that's why I'm just so excited to have you, James, on the call this morning with us. I'm just so excited to share. I know that, some of these kids in these schools are some of the most vulnerable children in the entire world. And you're helping to bring life, and you're helping to restore lives. And so we're going to get this kicked off here. And but just give us a little bit about, about the kids, about you, about the organization, and we'll just go from there. We'll just have a fun conversation about what IDEA is all about.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. I am so excited to join you guys. Just listening to you, I just feel like we're kindred spirits. You talk about loving and serving and giving and going, being the Lord's hands and feet in places of the world where there's just not much of a presence of Jesus yet, but to honor the Great Commission and to go and to be generous. So thanks for allowing me to talk about IDEA Philippines. It was started in the early 1980s, officially in 1985, by a guy from Billings, Montana, where I'm from, named Dennis Drake. And he just has had a great mind, just an entrepreneur, a good leader. He can just grow businesses and the organization and the schools. He passed away a couple years ago, unfortunately. So we miss him being with Jesus, but we're also excited that, he is with the Lord, and the Lord said, well done, my good and faithful servant, mission accomplished. And so since 1985, it started back then with about 6 kids, 6 deaf children in one classroom. And now we have 8, like you said, 8 schools with about 400, 440 kids between the 8 schools on 3 different islands, the island of Bohol and Leyte. And then a couple hundred since, over the years. So many of them have graduated, a couple hundred in different businesses and stuff like that. So my position is board president on the U.S. side of things. So just creating awareness of what IDEA does, fundraising and stuff like that, volunteer position. And really talk about those kids. Those kids really are some of the most vulnerable children in the entire world. They can't hear, they can't talk. Before IDEA finds these kids, they really just have just basic household chores, maybe helping raise other siblings, cooking, cleaning. Otherwise, that's their entire life. They don't understand anything. They don't have friends. They don't have relationships. And they don't have an understanding of the God who created them and loves them, and that they're not a mistake. And so IDEA goes out into the rural jungle areas and finds these kids and has to convince their parents to allow them to come and stay at the schools. And then the journey begins.
That's so cool. James, tell us how do you find IDEA? How did you get started?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in about 2005, I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and then got plugged into serving around our local community in Billings. And one of the churches here in town called Faith Chapel had been taking trips over at least once a year to serve with IDEA, help build some of the dormitories at the various schools, classrooms, help build the all-deaf Tip church. And so I got plugged in 2007 and said, Lord, I'd love to go serve somewhere else in the world, just because we're so blessed to be here in America, and we have the capacity to not only change where we live, but also in other countries. So I, joined up with the team of about 25 and ended up in the Philippines and serving IDEA. And then God did something extra special on that trip. We partnered with the local Foursquare church over there, and I met my wife during that trip. So she's from the Philippines, and we've been married 12 years, dated long distance for the first 4 years, traveled back and forth, and then finally convinced her to marry me. So
Good man.
That's pretty fun. So, man, that's quite the journey. And just kind of thinking about what you were saying, it's like, and I never would have even thought that, but born in the Philippines, and the Philippines in some areas can be really nice, but then right across the street, it's like can be totally third world.
Yeah.
Just like crazy, right? So it's we have office in the Philippines. So we have I think maybe 40 team members that work in the Philippines. And so just learning about it, like there's some really nice areas and then there's some really, really rough areas. And so one of the things that just kind of resonated with me was, yeah, they're deaf. So they can't hear. They don't understand. They can be in really impoverished, really rough areas. And then because they're deaf, they don't learn to make words with their mouth, right? So like they can't have a conversation like this because they can't hear the words to learn the words to create the syllables to have a conversation. And so really they're deaf and mute on some level. And so like I can't imagine just living the life and I can't articulate a thought or I can't share a thought like I'm hungry. How do they say I'm hungry? They wouldn't even know how to say I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Right? Other than point. And so just how they grow up. And it's not like growing up here in the US where there's lots of doctors and lots of opportunity for them to just immediately, start learning how to live life as a deaf child. Like this, if not rescued by IDEA, they may grow up without any communication with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It must be very depressing. Talk to us a little bit about that and how you really get in there and rescue them and maybe some just story about some of the successes you guys have had.
Yeah, so that when Dennis arrived in Bohol in the early 1980s, the people didn't even know what deafness was. They thought that their kids who were deaf, they couldn't speak, and so they call it amang, that you can't talk, you're mute. So they just thought they couldn't talk. They didn't know that they couldn't hear. And so now after almost 40 years, there's become just this great awareness of what it is to be deaf. There's an amazing deaf culture over there now. There's been so many kids who have gone through this program that there's an entire community, deaf community over there that is just flourishing. And we talk about also the church. It is really rare, I think, in all of the world to have a completely deaf church. And so we were able to visit the Tip Deaf Church a couple months ago, and it was one of the most beautiful things we've ever been a part of. There's sign language for worship songs, and then the pastor would invite the members up, and they'd sign what they're thankful for, they'd sign what they need prayer for, and then he would give the message in sign language. And it was just one of the most just really neat things to just witness and be a part of. And I've heard it said that if you took all of the deaf people in the entire world, they would be one of the top 2 unreached people groups for Jesus on our planet. And so thinking in that sort of a higher level capacity, like God is reaching the deaf community through organizations like IDEA, and these kids who would grow up and know nothing their entire life are learning about Jesus and learning about the God who loves them and created them, and that they are not a mistake, and they have capacity and gifts to love and serve just like we can and to make a difference. And so over these almost 40 years, there has been just so many success stories. And for instance, go ahead, Pastor David.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I would imagine that for them, their identity and, being deaf and then coming into a deaf school where they can actually relate with other, deaf students is such a huge thing for them, feeling so isolated in the hearing world and then coming into a community where, in a sense, they are not the strange ones. They are not the weird ones over here. Must be huge for these children to be able to learn and to realize that, there are others like them. Tell us a little bit about, when a deaf child comes into the school for the first time. What does that look like?
Yeah, once you convince their parents to let them come into the school, it usually takes them about 1 or 2 weeks. They're really, really scared and afraid because they've never been out of this environment, this isolated environment that they've grown up in their whole life. And they might be 5 years old or they might be 15 years old. So IDEA, takes kids in as they find them. So not all these kids are like little, 5 and 6 year old kids. Some of them are teenagers or even in their early 20s, and they start learning sign language for the first time. But after that first week or two, especially for the little ones that are so afraid, it is just like a flower blossoming, and these kids really just take off. It is pretty special. And so when we were back there in January and February, I got to tour all 5 of the schools on Bohol, and especially the elementary schools. You go in, grade by grade, and all the little kids are so interactive and excited. And I'm not very good with sign language, but it's just so much fun. Any of us can go over there and interact with them, and they just love it. And they are just so full of life and joy. And, they give you big giant hugs, and just the smiles on their face are amazing. It's just, there's nothing like it in the world.
Tell us about, kind of the progression. I mean, I know it's education, so you're starting off at elementary age education, and then you're taking them all the way through high school, right? 440 of them. Then
Yep.
What happens after they graduate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So once they get into high school, there's a private Christian high school on Bohol, and it's the only full high school that we have. There isn't one yet on Leyte with the 3 other schools. But on Bohol with the high school, you'd call high school like 7th through 12th grade. But really, once you hit the junior high and kind of getting into that 9th and 10th grade level, they begin more of a job-based education. So they have a restaurant, couple restaurants, a big hotel, a little hotel, and then they have a team of construction workers. So these kids in high school will begin to learn different trades, like becoming an electrician or a plumber or welding. They have, serving is a big deal. The island of Bohol has beautiful beaches and a lot of hotels. So there's opportunity for these kids to, work in different restaurants and resorts and areas like that. So, yeah. So really the high school is a mixture of higher, more learning like we're used to here, but also a lot of just practical job placement programs and developing a skill set.
So basically from school, no matter where they come in, they have an opportunity to be able to like have a career, and whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or the fly fishing, creating the fly fishing ties or whatnot, like life doesn't just stop at the school. Like there's opportunity for them that is, created by IDEA that keeps that community moving forward. Talk to us a little bit about the business and how the business initiatives work together and the importance that plays in their life and the community.
Yeah, I really saw it even play out when we went to visit the church. A lot of the prayer requests were like, help the garden cafe, get more business, or help the fly tie have more orders. And so it really is just this community is so dependent, like you said, after they graduate. Now it's like, well, if we didn't have the businesses, what would these young men and women do for employment if we didn't have these businesses? So, yep, they'll graduate. A lot of them will go work at the hotel and the convention center and the hotel. And then the most prosperous business that IDEA has is the fly tie. Like fly fishing is so popular in many parts of the U.S., like you guys know, especially during COVID, it really took off. The Philippines was one of the most locked down countries in the whole world for 2.5 years. The kids were out of school.
Wow.
And, but the fly tie business, they got more and more orders from here in Billings. And so they currently have about 65 employees that tie up these really intricate fly fishing patterns. And the owner of the business here on this end, he flies to Bohol once a year and teaches the employees new patterns. And then they'll mail over the little fly fishing flies. And yeah, it really is just this very successful partnership since about 2005.
Wow. Who would have thought that, a school like IDEA, a deaf school would create a fly fishing company that would then, not only be a great place for the students to go, but also create some income for
Yeah.
IDEA itself.
Yep. Yeah, isn't that great? It's phenomenal that business does create quite a bit of income for IDEA and employ, so many people. And it's all through relationships. Relationships are so important. And so our founder, Dennis, did such a good job between his time in the Philippines and then coming back to the US and just creating those relationships, even all over the US through the decades. So it really is phenomenal. And if the program only stopped at the education, I mean, the businesses are really tough. Like you guys know, it's hard to run a business. And in the Philippines, there's a lot of competition with different businesses, a lot of, it is a beautiful resort island. And so it's tough keeping these businesses going, but it is all part of the same, just the hope that these men and women have is that they can get a job, that they can raise their own families. And then on a personal level, my wife and I started sponsoring a deaf boy when he was 5. His name is Chris Polo. So that would have been about 2009. And he graduated exactly a year ago. And when we went over, we got to see him post-graduation, but he got a job at our Dow Diamond Hotel. And so he works in the convention hall and serving. And so it's really neat to see him. He graduated just about the top of his class, but now he has a job. He has purpose and skills in life to create an income. And his dad passed away last summer, and he has 2 brothers who are unemployed. And so it's really amazing to think that, he's the one helping his mom out with money from his paycheck. And yeah, he's the one contributing and helping out his family. And so we're just so proud of Chris Polo and seeing him through all these years through the child sponsorship program really just flourish into a wonderful young man who is a participating and contributing member of society too.
That's great. Tell us about the child sponsorship program. What is that?
Yeah, so for $45 a month, a person can sponsor one of these kids. They could be in the grade school or up into high school, but really that $45 a month for the grade school pays for the kids' food, shelter, clothing. They stay at the dorms and go home every other weekend. So most of the time they live on campus at these little elementary schools. And so that $45 a month really does a pretty good job. I mean, inflation, with inflation and prices going up, the Philippines has not been immune to that. And so, but for now, the cost is $45 a month, and it really does pay for the kids going to school and receiving that education and that hope. And then in the high school, it's a lot more expensive at the high school. So we do 2 shares at $45 a month for each child. And on the high school level, IDEA has to pay for all the teachers. And so there's a lot more cost involved at the high school. But yeah, it really makes, to be able to think that we can, just for one sponsorship, change a child's life, one of the most vulnerable kids in the entire world, for $45 a month really is exciting and amazing.
That's less than people are spending on coffee every morning, right? Because it's like $5-6 for a Starbucks, and every day times 30 days, it's like $180 a month or something on Starbucks. So, like, for what you spend on Starbucks, you could literally sponsor 4 kids.
Yeah, right.
What are? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, I don't like to talk about myself, but my wife and I love the program so much. We have ours graduated. Chris Polo graduated last year, so we have a couple other kids. So we have 3 that we sponsor, and then as people learn about the program, some people sponsor 1, and there's a guy in Billings, he sponsors 9. Wow. And then one of my other friends, he and his wife sponsor 10. And so, people really just see the difference that IDEA makes, and from hopelessness to hope, and they want to participate in what IDEA does. And really the $45 a month sponsorship program is the most practical way right now.
And what are the biggest needs that you have right now? What are the biggest challenges that you guys are facing today?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenges right now are like I touched on just a little bit, 2.5 years of being locked down. And so the kids would receive printed out packets at home. They basically didn't learn very much for the last couple of years. And so keep getting them caught back up to speed, being in class with all their friends again. It is we're so thankful that last August they got back into school finally. And it's kind of the same story with the businesses. The Philippines has been shut down from outside tourism up until, a handful of months ago. And so the businesses are still recovering, and add inflation on top of that. They had a horrible Typhoon Odette struck in December of 2021 and really was about the strongest storm that ever hit the island of Bohol and southern Leyte. So there has been just ongoing recovery the last couple of years, the loss of our founder, Dennis. So there's been a lot of challenges, but with the economy opening back up, the businesses starting to do better, everybody getting back to work, there's a lot of hope mixed in there.
How many students still need sponsorships?
We're at about 65 right now.
Okay, so you got about 65 opportunities.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that.
Yeah, and that website that you guys can see, that ideadef.org, there's a good sponsorship link. You can even go on the website, and it has the different kids and their ages and a little bit about their background, and a pretty seamless process to click on a child and sponsor through the online process. And then there's a whole team, each of these elementary schools, they have, kind of like an advocate on staff from IDEA that touches base with the families throughout the year and gives the sponsored parents updates throughout the year. And you'll get a couple report cards and a Christmas card, and, just really sweet updates.
That is amazing. So we always like to support the groups that are on here and that are working. So we like to try to do a match if we can. So I would say that mBridge, TransBlue, we will match 10 sponsorships. So if somebody, out there listening wants to sponsor for every match that comes in from this call, we will sponsor. We will match up to 10 of those. So hopefully that would, maybe if everybody matches, you'd get 20 and a third.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Amazing. So what we do is just, if you go to the mBridge website and you just put your donation in and just say, hey, this is for sponsorship, choose your child on the IDEA website. Just let us know so we can track it. And then we will match that. And so let's, hopefully as a community, as a world, we can live our mission of change the world. And, let's shoot to get 20 of these wonderful, beautiful kids, sponsored and, really help through this period of just, I'll call it economic upturn, since we're on the upswing. We're on the upswing of things. But let's do that. Let's really partner together. We love what you're doing. Amit on our one of the folks who listens in just wrote a nice message online and just really talks about how amazing it is to help the young kids, and his involvement with helping kids learn and just communicating from a young age, and just some of that awesomeness. So Amit, just thank you so much for what you do in your space, and thank you for commenting, and thank you for the very kind words. We love to hear from our audience out there. But yeah, just really come around, you guys, and support and build. I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible. I mean, I couldn't imagine, just as a father, you think of just as how protective you are over your children, and just protective over, everything from what they watch to who they hang out with to making sure they don't get bullied. And I couldn't imagine if my kids were deaf and mute and couldn't speak and talk, just the emotional pain and stress that I would feel as a parent, I think would just be bone crushing, just overwhelming. And so just whatever, just thinking about that every time you sponsor a child for $45 a month, you're changing their life. Their life is forever changed. They get to now communicate. I couldn't imagine a life without friends. I couldn't imagine a life without conversation. If I'm feeling bad or I don't understand and I want to communicate. I couldn't imagine not being able to even articulate how I feel. And so you bring this amazing gift of language to people who never had it. And it's just amazing to me that, all those years ago, they called it a mung, and they just didn't even understand that it was a hearing issue. They just thought they couldn't speak. And so just the culture that you've created in the country, just the amazing work that you've done, just changing those lives. And as a parent, it just touches your soul because, man, that could be my child.
Mm-hmm.
And if that was my child, I would go to the ends of the world. Why aren't you talking to me? Why aren't you communicating? Why aren't you learning to speak? What did we do wrong? How did we fail? You take all that responsibility on yourself as a parent. And so you're providing hope really to some of the hopeless. And I think that's an amazing thing. So like we said, we'll match 10 gifts and do that through the mBridge website, choose the child through the IDEA website, and just throw that in. And it's just really a privilege to have you.
By the way, Dave.
Yeah.
By the way, we'll have a little comment section in there so that if you do have a specific child that you want to sponsor, type that name in there. That way we can talk to James and we can get that connection so that, that really works.
Yeah. Awesome. James, as we bring this in for a landing, any final thoughts?
I'm just, we at IDEA US, we're just so optimistic that that this is God's ministry. He's the one that got the ball rolling almost 40 years ago through Dennis Drake and so many other relationships and people. And we're only on 2 islands in the Philippines, so there's an opportunity for tremendous growth. The Philippines has it's just estimated 110 million people. And so there's a lot of opportunities out there and a lot of kids who, just really need to be found and brought into schools and find the Lord that loves them. And so we're optimistic that there's parks in place that can grow and there's people in key positions that can lead well on the Philippine side of things, and that this thing can continue to take off and really change the world. So thank you guys so much for what you do. Thanks for offering that 10 sponsorship match. And we'll just pray that 10 people step up and want to change lives for these kids in the Philippines.
Let's do it. Dave, any final thoughts?
No, I'm just, again, thankful that we can do this and highlight IDEA. Love the work that you guys are doing. And proud to be able to come alongside of you guys and partner with you. Thank you.
Awesome. That's what the entrepreneurial journey is all about. It's about building an amazing business, changing the world. In fact, we were at an awards ceremony for the giving back in community just in our local area. And I can't remember the amount that Amazon gave this last year, but I want to say it was like it was either 57 million or 87 million. I've got it written down somewhere. I'm not looking at it, but I just incredible, how much like a large company like Amazon actually gives in a year, and just the philanthropy of business is just an amazing thing. And so you really see those top level companies, how much they really give to charity and really give back. And so, as you're building your business, look for those amazing causes, look for amazing things like IDEA that you can pour your time and your life and your energy into, because that's what makes it all worthwhile. And guess what? When we die, we don't get to pack all our money in a suitcase. We don't get to take it with us. All's we get is a whole lot of nothing. So at the end of the day, you can't take it with you. So what an amazing place to be able to give to. Thank you so much for being on our call this morning. It was an honor and a privilege to have you, and we'll look forward to seeing what we can put together on this match. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys. The honor's mine. Thanks for your time. God bless you guys.
Awesome. And if you like
Thanks,
this, give it a like, give it a share. Follow me on LinkedIn, Dave Westcott. Follow me on Facebook, Dave Westcott. And we will see you guys next week.
Righty.